Good afternoon, dear colleagues and guests. Let me start our dissertation council meeting dedicated to the defense of the dissertation of Iablonskii Kazimir Petrovich, seeking its candidate of economic sciences degree in the field 08005 economics and management. The topic is performance management of healthcare organizations. Let the session be open now.
Do you want to
In
turn off the
accordance
video or do
with
you
the
want to turn
Act
on?
of St. Petersburg University dated 23rd of March 2020, our session is online and everybody is online participating in it. According to St. Petersburg State University Act
Yes,
on the 23rd of March 2020, I, Gavrilova Tatiana Albertovna, Doctor of Technological Sciences, Professor, uh, Head of Department of Information Technology and in Management, St. Petersburg University, was appointed chairperson of the Station Council. Let me introduce other members of the Station Council. Igor Mikhailovich Akulin, Doctor of Medical Sciences, Professor, Head of Department of Healthcare Management, Medical Law, St. Petersburg University. Can you hear us? Yes, good afternoon. I'm very happy to see you. I can hear you very well.
do you want to
We can
turn
hear
off
you
the
very
video
well
or
as
do you want to
well.
turn on?
Farid Nakipovich Kanadirov, Doctor of Economic Sciences, Deputy Head of the Central Research Institute of Healthcare Management and Informatization. Can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you. Can hear and I'm present.
Yes.
Naif Govzan and Nelly Borisov, Doctor of Medical Science, Professor, Head of the Department of Public Health and Healthcare of Moscow State Medical Stomatological Dental University, named after Yevdokimov. Can you hear us? Nelly Borisov, can you hear us? Can you hear us? The microphone is off. Could you please turn on the mic? Of Healthcare Management, Medical Law, St. Petersburg University. Can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you and we can see you. Great, we can hear you and see you. And Professor Eli Ella Ambrose Zniad, PhD, Professor of University of Great Britain, UK. Can you hear us, Professor Eli?
Yes, of course. I can hear you well.
Да, конечно. Here and I'm present. And also include with us is Kazimir Petrovich Iablonskii, the candidate. Can you hear us? Can you see? I can see you and can hear you. Thank you. Also with us, the academic advisor of the candidate, Professor Yuri Vasilyevich Fedotov, a candidate of economic sciences, associate professor of the Department of Operation Management, St. Petersburg University. Can you hear us? Can you see? Yes, I'm here. I can hear and see you. Therefore, all members of the Dissertation Council and also the candidate are online. We can see each other and can hear each other. Colleagues, since our session is online in a remote mode,
Yes, of course.
please, everybody, follow the procedure. And if there's any technological breakup, please, you cannot hear or see someone, please let me know, and I will announce a technological break to fix the problem. And if there's any problem with connection with me, I would like Igor Mikhailovich Akulin to take my place and announce technical break, and then for the problem to fix. Igor Mikhailovich, do you agree with it? Yes, I do. Dear members of this station council, do you agree with this procedure? No objection. No objections. Thank you. Let's continue them. To improve the quality of the connection, please turn off your microphones when you're not speaking, and please don't forget to turn on the microphone when you start speaking, when you're given the floor. Also, there's an audio recording on and a live broadcast on the website of St. Petersburg University, accompanied by simultaneous interpretation from Russian to English and back. On the page of the dissertation candidate, um, there's an email which can be used by anyone to send
Вы не возражаете?
questions, but strictly on the
Возражений
dissertation
нет.
and on the
Нет возражений.
presentation.
Спасибо.
If these
Продолжим.
questions
Также для
are
улучшения
relevant, then I
связи,
will read
качества и
them,
связи, прошу
and
вас
the
выключить
dissertation
свои микрофоны, уважаемые
candidate
члены
will,
совета,
the
пока
author
вы не
will answer
говорите.
them.
Но не
Please
забывайте их
sign
включать, когда вам
your
будет предоставлено слово
questions.
или у вас появится
You
вопрос.
should
Сообщаю
write
также, что
your
ведется
affiliation,
аудио-видеозапись нашего
and
заседания и прямая
if
трансляция
this
на сайте СПБГУ.
if the
Также
questions are not
осуществляется
relevant
синхронный
to the
перевод
academic
выступлений с
discussion, they
русского
will
на
not be
английский
read.
или с
In
английского на
accordance
русский.
with the
На странице соискателя в
regulations
данное время размещен адрес электронной
to
почты, по которому в
award
течение
St. Petersburg
заседания
University
все, кто
academic degrees
слушает
of
прямую
Candidate of
трансляцию
Sciences
заседания Совета,
and
могут
other
высказать свое
bylaws of
мнение и
St. Petersburg
направить вопросы
University.
соискателю
The
онлайн,
dissertation council
касающиеся его
meeting
диссертации и
is
текущего научного
legitimate if
обсуждения его
not
выступления. Эти
fewer
вопросы
than
будут переданы
two-thirds
мне
of the
техническими
established
службами, и
dissertation
я
council
озвучу, если
membership,
будут такие
but not
вопросы во
fewer
время
than 4
дискуссии.
people are
Вопросы
present.
должны иметь отношение к
Our
выступлению
dissertation
соискателя
council
и
consists of 5
содержанию его
people, and all
диссертации.
5 people are
Обязательно
present.
указать фамилию, имя,
Therefore, we have the
отчество и
quorum.
должность
And
задающего
also, I would
вопрос,
like
а
to
также
ask
место
the
его работы.
curator,
Вопросы,
member of
не
the
имеющие отношения к научной
specialist of
дискуссии,
the
к обсуждению диссертации, к
dissertation
тексту и оценке самой
council
диссертации
support
озвучиваться не будут.
office, Larissa
В
Viktorovna
соответствии с
Khrushcheva,
порядком присуждения в
start
Санкт-Петербургском
a
государственном университете
presentation
ученой степени
attendance
кандидата
list
наук,
and put enter all the
утвержденный
names of
локальными
district council
нормативными
members that
актами,
are
далее
present.
это
And
будет
also, I would
называться
like
порядок.
to
Заседание
run through
диссертационного
the
совета считается
order of work.
правомочным, если в его
First,
работе принимает
we'll
участие не
hear
менее
a
2
short
третей от утвержденного
presentation of the
состава
chairperson
диссертационного
of the
совета, то
station
есть не
about the
менее
paperwork
4
that has
человек.
been submitted by the
Наш
district
совет состоит из
council.
5
The
человек,
dissertation
присутствуют все
author,
5, все в
not more than
интерактивном
5 minutes.
удаленном режиме.
Then a
Со
short
всеми членами
presentation
диссертационного совета обеспечен
of the
аудиовизуальный
candidate
контакт. Таким образом, я
on
могу
the
заявить, что кворум
dissertation
есть.
of not more
Я
than
поручаю
15
куратору
minutes. A
защиты,
question
специалисту отдела
to the
по
candidate
обеспечению деятельности
strictly
диссертационных
on the
советов Хрущевой
presentation, not
Ларисе
more than 2
Викторовне
minutes per
оформить
question.
явочный лист,
The
в
answers
котором прошу перечислить присутствующих
of
членов
the
совета и
candidate,
указать их
not more
режим
than 5
работы, в
minutes.
данном случае
All
удаленный.
members of the
А
section
теперь я
will read out
установлю
their
следующий регламент
reviews.
сегодняшнего
Then the
выступления и прошу
chairperson
всех
will
его
read out
придерживаться.
her review.
Общая
Then
продолжительность
there will
ориентировочно
be
около 2
concluding
часов.
answers of the
Первое– это
defendant
краткий доклад председателя о
more
предоставленных
than 5
соискателям
minutes. Then
документах и
the
их соответствии
chairperson will
требованиям
again
с ответами,
read out
примерно
any
5 минут.
questions that
Затем
have been
краткий доклад
submitted
соискателя
via
ученой степени, отражающий основные
email.
положения его
And then
исследования, примерно
questions, answers
15
of the
минут.
defendant, not more
Затем
than
вопросы
2
к
minutes per
соискателю по
question.
его
Then
докладу,
the
не более
academic
2
advisor
минут
will
на
speak
один
not
вопрос.
more than
Ответы
3 minutes.
соискателя не более
Dissertation
5 минут на все
council
вопросы.
members will
Затем идут выступления всех
then
членов диссертационного
deliberate.
совета
Then
поочередно со
open
своей оценкой
voting
исследования и
procedure will take
выступления
place.
соискателя,
The votes will be
с
counted,
изложением своих
and
позиций и с
a decision
вопросами и
will be taken
предложениями к
on granting and
диссертанту.
not
Примерно
granting
10
the
минут у
third degree.
выступающего.
And then the concluding
Потом идет
statement
выступление
from the
мое,
defendant. Do you have any
председателя со своей
questions,
оценкой,
dear
тоже
colleagues,
10 минут.
according to the procedure?
Далее итоговые ответы соискателя на заданные вопросы, не более
No
5 минут.
objections.
Затем представление председателем
Then,
вопросов в адрес
therefore, we
соискателя,
accept this
пришедших в порядке обсуждения и
procedure.
научной дискуссии по
And then,
трансляции
if there's
заседания, если они
no
поступили.
objections,
Ответы соискателя не
I
более
would
2
like
минут
to
на
start
один
with the
вопрос.
first item.
Дальше
Again,
последует
ask you
выступление
to
научного руководителя соискателя не
turn
более
off
3
your
минут
mobile phones,
и обсуждение членами диссертационного совета перед открытым
but
голосованием
don't put
результатов
your
защиты,
phones
на
away. If
время
there's any
которого звук
problem, then
трансляции
you
будет
will have to
отключен.
contact you by
Примерно
phone.
5 минут. Затем открытое поименное
first
голосование, подсчет голосов
item
председателем,
is
занесением
the
результатов
floor
в
is given
протокол
to Yuri
заседания.
Vasilyevich,
Далее принятие решения о
after
присуждении или
dot
не
of
присуждении
the
ученой
academic
степени по
advisor of the
результатам
dissertation.
голосования и заключительное слово
Yuri
соискателя
Vasilyevich,
не более
please.
2 минут. Уважаемые
Dear
коллеги,
colleagues,
есть ли вопросы или возражения по данному
Kazimir
регламенту?
Petrovich Iablonskii is a
Нет.
alumnus
Пожалуйста.
of our
Нет.
university.
Тогда мы
Well,
принимаем данный регламент.
unfortunately, your video is not on.
Тогда,
Yes,
если нет
sorry.
возражений, перейду к
Yes,
реализации
thank you.
регламента. Но
Now
прежде
everything
всего
is.
прошу
Kazimir
отключить
Petrovich
звук
is
мобильных
an alumnus
телефонов.
with a master's
Спасибо за
degree from
понимание.
the School of Management,
Но
St. Petersburg
вы их
University,
далеко не
and
убирайте, потому что если возникнут
doctoral
какие-то вопросы по связи, чтобы вы
studies
видели,
program as
что на
well.
экране.
He is working
Итак,
in
приступаем к
healthcare
ведению
system
заседания.
in the
Слово
Committee
для
of
краткого представления
Healthcare and the Government St.
соискателя
Petersburg. The
представляется
topic
научному
of the
руководителю
research.
Яблонского Казимира Петровича,
The
кандидату
research
экономических
was
наук,
done at the
доцентру кафедры
Department of
операционного
Operational
менеджмента
Management
Санкт-Петербургского государственного
and
университета Федотову Юрию
dedicated to
Васильевичу. Юрий
healthcare
Васильевич.
organizations. During the course of the
Уважаемые
work,
коллеги,
Kazimir
Казимир
Petrovich
Петрович
participated
Яблонский,
actively in the life of the department
выпускник
and conference, took part
нашего
in conferences,
университета.
including
Юрий
international
Васильевич,
conferences. All
у
the
вас
По-моему,
publications are in
видеокартинки, видеорядом. Будьте
conformity
добры.
with
да, извините. Так,
the
Спасибо.
теперь все
the
есть.
regulations
Казимир Петрович,
of
выпускник
St.
магистратуры
Petersburg
Высшей школы
University,
менеджмента
seeking an
и
academic degree of computer
аспирантуры
science. Thank
Высшей
you very
школы
much.
менеджмента.
You will be given the floor again
Работает
after
в сфере
the
здравоохранения в
presentation of the
Комитете
defendant.
здравоохранения администрации
I
города
would
Санкт-Петербурга.
say a few words about Kazim
Тема
Petrovich. His
исследования,
dissertation
работа выполнялась на кафедре
on
операционного
the
менеджмента.
topic of
Работа
performance measurement of
посвящена
healthcare
анализу эффективности
organizations was
деятельности
accepted for
медицинских
defense on the
организаций.
20th of March
В ходе работы
2020 by the act of
активно
academic
участвовал
secretary of St.
в
Petersburg University.
жизни
He wrote his
кафедры, участвовал активно
thesis
в
in
конференциях,
St.
в том
Petersburg
числе, так сказать,
University
и
under the
международных,
guidance of Yuri
имеет
Vasilyevich
все
Fedotov.
публикации и полностью
The number of
соответствует
publications
требованиям,
which cover the main results of the
полностью
dissertation is
удовлетворяет всем
three,
требованиям, которые предъявляются к
out of
соискателю
which two publications
на
in the
получение
referee
соответствующей
journals
ученой степени.
listed by the
Спасибо,
Ministry
Юрий Васильевич,
of Science of
за
St.
представление. Вам еще будет предоставлено
the
слово
Russian
после
Federation,
выступления
and
соискателя и
one
оглашения отзывов
publication
членами
in the
Совета.
Web of Science or
Теперь я вам кратко
Scopus.
расскажу про Казимира
The
Петровича
defendant
уже
submitted
официально. Его
all
диссертация на соискание
documents
ученой
that are
степени
required,
на тему оценка
and
эффективности
all
деятельности
of them,
медицинских
all
организаций
these
принята к
documents
защите
conform,
приказом ученого
meet the
секретаря 20
requirements,
марта
and
2020 года.
all the
Написал
curator
Казимир
has all
Петрович
the
свое
copies,
исследование на базе нашего
and
университета под научным руководством
before
Юрия
I
Васильевича
give the
Федотова,
floor
доцента
to the
кафедры
defendant,
операционного менеджмента Петербургского
please,
государственного университета.
I would like to
Количество
ask you if you
публикаций, в
have
которых
any
излагаются
general
основные
questions
научные результаты диссертации согласно
on
представленному списку,
the paperwork,
3.
or
Из них в рецензируемых
should we
научных изданиях из перечня
no
утвержденного
need
Минобр
to
науки 2 публикации,
list the paperwork?
и
No. Do you
в
have any other
изданиях,
opinions?
индексируемых
Well,
в
therefore, no
научно-методических
questions.
базах
Okay,
данных
Kazimir
Web of Science и
Petrovich,
Scopus одна.
you are given the
Соискатель представил
floor.
ученому секретарю полный пакет
15
документов для
minutes
принятия к
resume.
рассмотрению и защите диссертации.
The organizer has unfortunately, it says that the demonstration of the screen is not on, and I have an announcement that's running on the screen that I don't have the right to do that. Could you give Kazimir Petrovich, Ivan, you give him the right to demonstrate the screen? Is it possible? We're going to get into contact with the IT right now. Could you please announce a technical break, please? Dear members of the station, there will be a short technological break to fix the problem with just 1-2 minutes. Well, we can see your presentation. Does everybody see my presentation? Dear colleagues, the technical break is over. Professor Ali has left us. Let's wait for him to return. Please let us know because I cannot see that. I can see Nila Borisovna. Larissa Victor. Is online again. The technical break is over in the second time. Now we're giving the floor to our defendant. Dear members of the Station Council, well, the main provisions of the dissertation are performance measurement of healthcare organizations for the degree of candidate of economic sciences and the specialty economics of national economy. It was done in St. Petersburg University under the leadership of Yuri Fedotov. Um, the general accepted management system as performance management. This approach involves solving many questions of methodological, organizational, and other things related to the development of an adequate system of assessing the effectiveness of the organization of its units. The implementation of this research suggests that performance management should be developed for the management of organization. The health is no exception. Well, the introduction of performance management system in the healthcare setting is effective measure both to improve the quality of medical care and to identify priority areas for the development of healthcare systems, general and medical organization in particular. There are different gaps in this area. Is that most studies analyze the effectiveness of national regional health systems rather than the effectiveness of individual medical organizations. Thus, the evaluation of effectiveness in the field of healthcare, primarily at the level of medical organization, is an area that's relevant in scientific practical sense. The aim of the study is to develop methodology for assessing the effectiveness of stationary hospitals, as shown in the slide. Moreover, we proceed from the fact that we should be comprehensive, should be multidimensional, reflecting the many resources and results of its use, multidimensional in the sense of taking into account various areas of activity, medical, social, human resources, scientific, innovative, environmental, construction, economic, etc., as well as multi-subject, which implies taking into account the positions of interested parties. The empirical part of the study consisted in the formation of an empirical database, the development of a model for assessing the effectiveness of healthcare facilities, is testing on the example of some stationary hospitals in St. Petersburg, and the demonstration of the possibilities was used to support management decisions. The object of the study, the subject are presented on the slide. The structure, the work consists of the introduction, 3 chapters, a short summary of which you could see on the first slide and the conclusion. A review of the literature revealed the prevailing values of the parameters of scientific research and the evaluation of the effectiveness in the healthcare. Firstly, English language research differs from Russian language research in different aspects, object, subject, and research methods. Speaking about the research object, a total of 4 hierarchical levels of research objects were identified. These are global, national, regional, and the level of individual health facilities. In English language studies more often consider the level of medical organization, and Russian-speaking studies of region health systems. This is another of the acts of the Russian language literature. The subject of Russian language research is not only economic efficiency, but also technical efficiency, while Russian-speaking research are limited to assess economic efficiency. The methods used are also different between Russian and English language studies. English speakers use econometric analysis and benchmarking methods, which are normative, which allow not only to evaluate but to also interpret the result of a certain. Russian language studies use positive models that indicate the presence or absence of the relationship between the analyzed variables, which is also a gap. Speaking about the practice of evaluating, both at the level of the Russian Federation and at the level of the regions, we're in the same piece with the methodologies of evaluating effectiveness of state-owned healthcare facilities were approved. The methods evaluate a wide range of aspects of healthcare facilities. This is the provision of labor resources and the fulfillment of state tasks, the quality of the medical care provided, and the scientific and innovative activities of the healthcare facilities. Speaking about the methodology, you see for constructing comprehensive assessment of the effectiveness of healthcare facilities. I note that hospitals are primarily an organization. There are many interpretations of this concept. And note that hospitals, one of them is Barney's state definition, and organization is an association of productive access that combine to produce economic benefits and advantages. An organization exists as long as the owners of the assets provide their assets to the organization, and they do it only when they're satisfied with the results. Therefore, the effectiveness of the organization is determined by the ratio of the existing value of the assets with the value of the owner that the owners of the assets expect to receive. And then the prism of the organization performance prism. I would like to talk about this. Neely specified the relationship between available and expected asset values as follows. Stakeholder contributions are owners' assets. The expected value resulting from the organization's activities depends on whether the organization follows a development strategy that suits its stakeholders. Does the organization use the available resources efficiently, and also how flexible the organization can adapt to the changing conditions are the questions that stakeholders ask. And this implies the multidimensional nature of the comprehensive assessment of the effectiveness of healthcare facilities. Thus, a comprehensive assessment of the effectiveness of organizations and healthcare facilities in particular, it is a multi-subject characteristic consisted of particular characteristics of stakeholder satisfaction, taking into account their weighting factors. In this study, stakeholders were identified as follows. First, the management of the healthcare facility, as well as the leadership of the public authority in the field of healthcare. Secondly, it's the medical staff of the healthcare facility. Only doctors and paramedical personnel were taken into account, since representatives of only these categories are directly involved in the provision of healthcare, medical care. Thirdly, of course, these are patients. And to quantify the effectiveness of healthcare facilities, it was necessary to choose adequate methods for these constructions. Satisfaction of the management of healthcare facilities is primarily associated with the efficient use of resources. Therefore, non-parametric methods of frontal analysis, that is, an analysis of the resources spent on the results obtained, are an inadequate method of assessing it. This is a model of the comprehensive assessment of effectiveness of the performance. The first step is evaluating effectiveness of the evaluating effectiveness is to evaluate the satisfaction of healthcare management. The following variables were used: characterizing resources, cost of various materials, labor costs, um, characterizing the desired results, the number of treated patients, characterizing an undesirable result, the number of patients who were who provided with poor quality medical care. Uh, the For this, a survey was conducted in 2016 and 2017, jointly with the Healthcare Committee. Questionnaires were developed for each of the interested parties. A feature of the questionnaires was the use of a continuous version of the Likert scale. The presented scale allows the respondent to most accurately reflect their assessment of one or another aspect of the activities of healthcare facilities, as it does not contain an imposed discrete scale, and also increases the discriminatory power of the received estimates. And 2016, 20 questionnaires of each type were sent out. After an excellent response was received, more than 100% of the questionnaires returned. In 2017, number of questionnaires was increased to 30. The following slide show attributes that are evaluated by doctors, nurses, and patients who that acted as variable. And The estimates of these attributes were converted to a summary measure as follows, as shown in this slide. I note that the correct calculation by the APIS method, a prerequisite for weight coefficients of attributes and order and relations of preference for healthcare facilities, are necessary. Um, I, the advantage of ATOS methodology is that it allows not only to rank the analyzed unit, but also to identify a system of preferences, which is the system of weighting coefficients. I also note that in the first place was the modernity, the up-to-date character of the diagnostic methods, and in the second place was the possibility of professional development. Uh, this may mean the this may mean that the doctors are less concerned about the availability of medicine's technical capabilities, and the key to quality care methods is the correct diagnosis of personal knowledge and skills. And then I would like to talk about the nurses, uh, about the patients, and the the, um, the results. So again, I said that the structure of this complex comprehensive analysis performance evaluation, was the integration of the obtained assessment of the effectiveness of healthcare facilities by interested parties as attributes of integrated efficiency. We took the results of an assessment of the technical effectiveness of healthcare facilities, the results of an assessment of stakeholder satisfactions. Thus, the structure of the developed comprehensive assessment of the performance of healthcare facilities is as follows. Uh, the the two-thirds of the in terms of the assessment, the weights of the coefficients have not changed, but with the time there was more stress on the quality of healthcare. And I would like to talk about the top part of this. 90% of the significance is the technological effectiveness, and this is for the management. The patient is the improvement of health after of receiving medical care in the health facilities, and for the doctors as the up-to-date methods of diagnostics. And this information about the satisfaction can serve as a foundation for the measurement for the performance measurement of each facility. Well, we've seen we analyzed 15 healthcare facility number 15, 2016 and 2017. The position in the rating in 16 was 19, and then 17 29, and in the third column you see as the performance indicator. And so if we look at the satisfaction of doctors that's analyzed the characteristics of the performance of this healthcare facility, you see that in the up-to-date methods of diagnostics is the first column, and the second one is opportunities of professional development, and you can see that some of these indicators have fallen, and so this contributes to the negative dynamic of the performance indicators between these 2 years. These are the results of the comprehensive measurement of the effectiveness of the performance of this facility in 2017. The facts the fact that the resources are underused or are not used effectively can be a sign to the management why the rating has dropped. Then we analyzed methodological approaches to the performance effectiveness, and then developed an approach to the measurement assessment. We also adjusted the methodology of the organization efficiency Prism to be applied to medical organizations, and also we justified DA model, the application of DA model to healthcare organizations, and then we built a comprehensive assessment methodology of the effectiveness of state-run healthcare organization of St. Petersburg that works through the system of mandatory health insurance, and also identified the weighted coefficients and other factors. We identified the most significant attributes in the eyes of the stakeholders. Also, we identified different avenues of improvement at the level of the government of St. Petersburg and at the level of the organization. The level of St. Petersburg is the Committee of Healthcare Management, and the first one is the diagnostics of the effectiveness of the healthcare institutions, and the second one is the identification of the reasons of lagging behind. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Kazimir Petrovich, thank you for the presentation. The members of the Dissertation Council, do you have any questions? Please. Can I have a question? Can I ask a question? Yes. Dear Kazimir Petrovich, thank you for the presentation. My question, have you used any regulations or methods developed by the Committee of Healthcare Management of the government? And if you used developed methods by you, then have they been used by the Healthcare Committee? well, the conventional, well, these methods were not used officially, but at the at the level of the districts, local, and also institutions themselves. These methods were discussed, and they were deemed adequate. Dear Kazimir Petrovich, you talked about the high weight of resources. What is the source of the resources? Only external investment or any internal investment, including cutting costs. Can we study this in the future? Can you study this? Dear Nelly Borisovna, this is possible, but for this we need to apply a method, the APIS method, to analyze the feasibility of the activity of the organization. But what the analysis that I used the data don't allow this to be applied. In your work, the financial result, the financial results, the return based on the mandatory health insurance resources. What about, well, the uh, the revenue that is used through the health insurance should go into providing high quality health care, medical assistance. Dear Farid Nikipovich, in the dissertation, the financial parameters are accounted for in this way. I don't avoid them. I don't evade them. I I use four variables, two variables of resources and two variables of results. The resource variables. The first is costs to acquire medical materials, and the second labor costs of medical personnel. Well, wages. Mm, In this, the costs that cover the number of that reflects the revenue through the insurance system is accounted for, uh, including for high quality healthcare. You have a multi-factor model, and these factors have different weights. Did you consider any weights, any priorities, and how did you order them? If on what basis did you use to rank them? The weights coefficients that I used derived from this. The APIS method for information deficit analysis works in this way. Every medical institution is represented as a number of alternative uh, attributes. The APIS method is then applied to compare pairs uh, uh, by inputting uh, data in order to produce a non-contradictory picture. I consulted specialists at the government of St. Petersburg and also management of the institutions. And the first aspect is the expectation of the ranking of weighted coefficients of the satisfaction of the stakeholders. And there were two presumptions used. The one is the weight coefficient is the satisfaction of management is higher than the satisfaction of doctors, and the second one is the satisfaction of doctors is more significant than the satisfaction of nurses or middle medical personnel. And unfortunately, the patient's satisfaction were not so were not so were not accounted for so well. I was just interested in the verification. With how many experts did you consult? Two, three, four, five, seven. Seven experts. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I got some question. I don't know how the order is works. Okay. Now, a couple of general questions, because you mentioned several times about effectiveness, but a lot of your work is about efficiency. What's the difference between effectiveness and efficiency, and how do you measure effectiveness? Then I'll get back to other questions.
Thank you, Professor Ali. We're talking in my work about the feasibility, which is efficiency, economic feasibility, and as far as the effectiveness is concerned, we translate this as resultiveness. So result orientedness. So in terms of the economic term, it's efficiency. This was the first. So what was the focus? Was the focus on more on the efficiency or the result? The first stage is the profitability of the work of the institution, and the second stage, comprehensive characteristic that included the results as well of the work of the organization. Professor Ali, are you satisfied with the answer?
Well, let's continue that, because you talk about profitability, and apparently in healthcare system, the profitability is not one of the major income. I mean, one of the major output, because there's a quality important in the healthcare system. So it could be some hospital or healthcare organization have a very good quality services, but not much profitability. How would you trade off between profitability and quality of the healthcare system? Yeah.
As first, we are talking about the first stage, about the returns and the effectiveness and efficiencies. We use two variables: the number of treated patients is the volume parameter. The second variable is the number of badly treated patients, which is a negative result. Is so in aggregation, these are the two main parameters for the performance of an institution.
No, I totally understand that. And in fact, in your
Yeah,
DEA model, you did include mortality, for example, as one of the bad output, which is reflected the quality. But what I have not seen, what sort of weights DEA assigned to these variables? Have you checked the weights? It's quite possible that DEA assigns 0 weight, for example, to mortality, or for some hospitals, 0 weight. Did you check the weights assigned by DEA to any of these variables?
yes, we've checked that. As far as the mortality was not accounted for, this is to avoid the problem of to avoid the problem of difference between institutions of non-heterogeneous characteristics. In some institutions, the mortality rate can be quite high, and it's okay. In some other institutions, depends on what medical assistance they provide.
But also, did you check the weights assigned to input and output in the DEA? Because it's quite possible, as I said, some of the weights are assigned to be 0. And if the weight is assigned to be 0, that means that input or that output variable has been neglected from the DEA, totally out of the analysis.
I haven't done that. Done it that the weight coefficient was 0. I didn't have that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, I have some questions, but I want to give it floor to to other people to ask questions.
Please, you can ask a question. If you want to ask a question, please do it.
Okay. And another general question is, how did you decide about using the DEA methodology? So why generally use DEA and not other methodology? There are many other techniques available for performance indicators, evaluation of healthcare organization. Okay, DEA is one of them. But how did you come to DEA, Mummy?
Initially, we used not only the DA analysis, but also stochastic and boundary analysis. But when we used it, we had a problem because it's a parametric method. It doesn't allow to account for several results of the activity of the organization. We used it at the initial stage, but when we came to a conclusion that we have some problems with interpreting the results and that they don't look plausible, don't come out plausible, we decided to use the method that could take into account not only several variable parameters of the activity of the organization, but also not only several resources, but also several results. Therefore, we chose the analysis DA because it allows to take into account the required number of variables. As far as the modifications of the method,
yeah,
of the DA,
yeah.
we didn't use that because we focused on the efficiency of the analyzed facilities. and in each year, in each year, uh, by each year.
And what was the disadvantage of using DEA as compared with other models?
The one of the features of using the DAA model is that we had results that demonstrated that more than two organizations are profitable, but well, but we found out that there are some organizations with unique proportional proportions of input resources and output results. And of course, therefore, we cannot, we have some constraints in terms of interpreting our results because they are they're specific to some unique qualities of the analyzed organizations.
DEA, sorry, one more question and I'll turn it on. DEA is also very sensitive to selection of input and output. How would you validate your results? I mean, by simply removing one of the variable or adding another variable, the whole efficiency score might be changed and the order may be changed. How would you validate the results of your model?
That we analyze the output results, and the justification of the results is the expert evaluation of the experts, including the assessment of an institution's economic performance. And also the proof was a high correlation of the evaluations on the economic efficiency and the satisfaction of the stakeholders. So there was a high concordation coefficient that proved that our estimates, our interpretation of the results was accurate.
Okay, let's see if anyone else has got question.
The magazine City analyzed the performance of healthcare institutions based on the evaluations of the doctors. Can you say that they're compatible with your results? And they analyzed both private clinics and state clinics. I haven't heard about this particular research, but I know of the surveys that the Committee for Healthcare Management conducts this ranking. That ranking that didn't cover all of the analyzed institutions in my research. I know about the ranking, the annual ranking of the Ross Business Consulting agency, and we looked at it. So when we tried to assess the adequacy of our interpretations, well, we saw that the aspects that were assessed there and in our research were different, but in some cases the compatibility was there. Dear Kazimir Petrovich, can is the method suitable for assessing the performance of each institution, for example, by the chief, uh, the CEO, or other management figures? Is it easy to use? Because and the methods when it's used by a researcher is one thing, and then if a non-specialist uses it, the application is quite a different matter. Is it is it good for assessing the effectiveness of any given institution? That and the methods can be used, methodology can be used at different levels, at the level of the regional government, or even the CEO of the institution, and or even unit management. Of course, maybe the attributes, the composition of the attributes could be adjusted. The stakeholders will be different, and what aspects of activity you want to measure, the CEO of the organization would like to measure, etc. But undoubtedly, this is a practical methodology, and it's not difficult to use. Maybe fine adjustment is needed in each context, because interpretation is important, and this should be worked on. Thank you. The members of the station. Well, if you have any questions, then we'll continue our procedure. I understand that partly each member of the station council can ask questions during the work of the session. There are two ways of answering questions. We recommend that you answer each member of the dish station. Yes, certainly I can answer questions of each member of the station council. All the reviews have been published on the website of St. Petersburg University. Therefore, I suggest that the critical part should be read, and any key statements only. Therefore, if you have any objections, then we'll start with Igor Mikhailovich Akunin. Your review, please. Dear Tatiana Albertovna, dear Kazimir Petrovich, I will not read my review in full. What I would like to say that the relevance is absolutely there, because the assessment of regional systems of healthcare and the national health care system, is quite a studied area, and it's a clear area, whereas the assessment of performance of individual healthcare organizations is understudied. Uh, and we're talking now about inpatient facilities, and well, in terms of the healthcare system, it doesn't cover all the needs of the of a healthcare organization. At the end of the day, they come out in deficit, and there are some negative moments of the economic downsized economy, etc. So the complex assessment of different dimensions in terms of the personnel from the perspective of the CEO, the management, the patients, etc. This is a very relevant study, and I liked it. In terms of the revenues, research revenues that it provides. Well, well-argued statements. We have tables and a very good comparison of foreign assessment techniques and Russian assessment techniques, and where there are gaps, and this can be used as a foundation for very uh, good further research. And I like to see that absolutely different criteria are used abroad and in Russia, and the interpretation of results is different, and it's very interesting to see that. And you could see a comprehensive picture, and this evaluativeness emerges, and it's a very difficult thing to do as well, and uh, and it's very good that using these measurement techniques, you can compare different institutions. Huge data was uh, processed, and uh, I'm very impressed by it. Well, so many questionnaires and the return of the number of the questionnaires, and well, um, the data is very statistically representative. All in all healthcare institutions have been covered, and this is the first time I've witnessed such a scale of research, and the mathematical analysis is very, very viable. And as a result, all the healthcare institutions are ranked, and at the regional level, everything is the rankings are quite primitive, whereas this ranking is quite sophisticated, and I applaud that. The novelty of the research, the originality of the research is there. The approach to the efficiency of a healthcare institution, uh, as a case study, was St. Petersburg institutions were used. All the goals and the objectives of the station were reached, and so when I read it, I wanted to see who was ranked first, who was ranked second, etc. And this is the future, and this instrument can be used by government, and we will see how it will be used in practice. I like the work, very interesting work, very good, clear language. I enjoyed reading it, and easy to read. It was easy to read, quite good literary language, and at the same time, well structured narration. And well, as far as the stakeholders, this question was answered already. And well, I'm not sure whether you had to include the medical workers, like nurses and auxiliary workers. Maybe we should have. As far as the procedure goes, the dissertation by Iablonskii, Kazimir, Petrovich meets the key requirements of awarding academic degrees in St. Petersburg University, and and the the candidate Iablonskii Kazimir Petrovich deserves an academic degree of economic sciences and management. Uh, uh, so my review is over, completed. Thank you very much for your full-fledged presentation. Dear Yuri Mikhailovich, thank you very much for very detailed work that you've done on my dissertation, reviewing my dissertation. As far as the key stakeholders are concerned, we concentrated on medical assistance itself, and therefore we used the categories of personnel that are involved in medical assistance. Auxiliary workers or other, they're support personnel, but they cleaners, sentry, hygienic, and also helping nurses with simple procedures. We didn't include them because the they may decrees of president of 2012 some and so that the pay level of medical workers should be increased. Some heads of medical institutions transferred the junior medical personnel to the category of other personnel, which makes it impossible to conduct a correct analysis of satisfaction with the activities of medical institutions of these personnel categories. And we don't, unfortunately, there's this confusion of who is in what category, and it would mess up the whole comparative study. Farid Nakipovich, the next member of the station council is Kadyrov Farid Nakipovich, the members of the station council. It's a very relevant work because despite the multiple studies in this area, methodologies change, and the task before different institutions change. The and different institutions, different regulators assess the work of the performance of an institution from their own perspective. The tax uh, service from one, then the government, the healthcare committee from other, and therefore we need a comprehensive analysis, and this is a very interesting niche, and that's understudied, and therefore I will not dwell on the commending part of my review. I will just say that some avenues should be developed even further. Um, maybe some questions concerned with this. Characteristics of the activities of activities of multidisciplinary, highly specialized hospitals are different, providing those institutions that provide primary emergency and planned care, medical care. Adults, children's hospitals are different, as maternity hospitals are different, etc. And then different separate justification is required for taking into account the heterogeneity of medical organizations of various types of activity when assessing the effectiveness of their activities, the efficiency of their activities, or effectiveness of their activities, since, for example, the same mortality rate is in a fast care hospital and in a hospital which mainly provides planned medical care may indicate different work efficiency medical organizations. Again, um, the niche is chosen, and as far as the some terms, the main term is level medical or healthcare and prophylactic institution. Well, LPU in Russian, this is a special category of organization, and for example, it doesn't include clinics and hospitals of universities where they do research, etc. And as far as this qualification, uh, there aren't many institutions of St. Petersburg that are entirely NLPU, and but so healthcare facilities or medical institutions are a better term to use. But this criticism doesn't diminish the value of the dissertation, and the dissertation fully complies with the requirements of the St. Petersburg University, yeah, concerning the awarding of academic degrees, and the candidate deserves the degree of Candidate of Sciences in economics to be awarded to him, and the plagiarism part is not violated. The requirement is not violated. Kazimir Petrovich, dear uh, Farid Nakipovich, thank you very much for your detailed analysis as far as the terminology, um, the medical organization or prophylactic organization. Well, I use both terms. Uh, First, the the methods can be used to any medical organization. This method was uh, used to state-run medical institutions of St. Petersburg in the future, and therefore I use the LPU term because because the because this is also a legal status of these organizations. As far as the inpatient and outpatient facilities, well, this factor could impact the comprehensive analysis of the performance. To minimize this, the question is had on included only patients that were treated in the clinic as inpatients. Thank you very much. I'm satisfied. Nelly Borisovna, your dear members of the Dissertation Council, dear Tatiana Albertovna, the issue of assessment is very relevant. It has been relevant for over 30 years. In healthcare, for example, for many years, economic assessment, managerial assessments have dominated that didn't take into account the specificity of the organizations. And when the priority or targeted national programs, investment programs were introduced, the assessment techniques again were adapted, and unfortunately these adjustments have been fragmented, And I think that the work is very effective in balancing the economic parameters and the organizational and the clinical parameters of the clinic's businesses and business. And this comprehensiveness allows us to look at the phenomena in a more profound way. What as far as the multidimensionality, this is a very good thing because it gives an instrument to use this method. What is more? What was more? Well, is the what I liked very much is the variable of undesired results, and for me the most important attribute for nurses or middle level personnel have the qualification of doctors, and uh, and the author of the station also looks at the quality of information in the system because this is a very problematic area within the healthcare system as far as the strategies of organizational development. Uh, well, these assessments can go a long way to help that the the station the author I'm looking forward at the assessment of the author of the station of the practical application of his methods uh, in St. Petersburg's healthcare organizations. And the data used in the work, the dissertation, the data used makes the quality of the station very high, and therefore I can state that the dissertation written by Kazimir Petrovich Iablonskii complies with the requirements of the St. Petersburg University, and therefore its author deserves to be awarded the degree of Candidate of Economic Sciences. Thank you very much for your review. Dear Nelly Borisovna, thank you for the time that you gave. Well, in the future, I will use the practical importance, and in practice, we'll try to make sure that the developed methodology will be used at the level of St. Petersburg government, and hopefully that the results will be published too.
Спасибо. Слово предоставляется профессору Али Эмружнияду.
Professor Emlyn Emruzniad.
Yes, the member of the council. Well, I already submitted.
Спасибо большое.
I already submitted my report. I'm not going to read it again. The pre-pivot report. I think I found that the dissertation is fairly advanced in its conceptual development and a strong methodological modeling used. Overall, the structure is very clear. The English written is okay. I assume the Russian part is written well better than English. The discussion follow up chapter by chapter, so the content of the chapter is very good structure within each chapter. I think there are some novel contribution to the literature as well as to the methodology. Not from the technical point of methodology, DE has been used in many hospital efficiency of area of the healthcare organizations, but I hardly ever seen use of DE in Russia. So this is probably would be very good add-on to the DE studies. And specifically in Russia and St. Petersburg, probably it may come with some impact if the result can be used by decision maker. I raised a couple of issues in my report. I mean, I just raised them for improvement in future. There are many advanced DE modeling, but I also like the simplicity in this technologies, the modeling that used by Kazimir. Because the simplicity make it more clear for decision maker to understand what's going on behind DEA, as opposed to more advanced mathematical techniques of the DEA used in the literature. I think overall the thesis submitted by Kazimir meets the requirement for the PhD. I have some comments if I mean you want to get published in future or do a little bit more work for continue on this area if you future, specifically from the DEA point of view. But for the content of this dissertation, I think what is written at the moment to me is enough for the degree of the PhD. Sorry, probably you had a lot of noise from my side because my neighbor is doing construction, and I'm sorry I cannot stop. Yeah. So yes, yes, I think as I said, the idea expressed throughout the dissertation are clearly sufficient clear and is well written dissertation.
Диссертация хорошо написана, и она достаточна для того, чтобы присуждена была степень. Dear Professor Ali, thank you very much for your review. I would like to say that the DEA method is done without the use of modifications that we heard about today already. One of the avenues of further research is proving the applicability of other DA method modifications, and this could be an entire new development area and also assessment area for the institutions. Thank you very much, Kazimir Petrovich. I would like to read my review now. It's my turn. Because my review is also published. I will talk informally. I liked their work for its systematic character. What is stated is then argued. The any assessment is a multifaceted phenomenon, and the thesis does include a lot of perspectives, and I like the approach. But on the other hand, the systematic character, when we have this situation, pandemic situation, and the reduction of investments into healthcare, this situation will make make it possible for decision makers to take a decision on higher investment into healthcare and providing better quality of medical assistance. And I hope that this dissertation will be used to this end. And the volume of the research is quite staggering. The period that it has covered is quite long. Conceptually, I liked the thesis as well, the effectiveness, and has been assessed. And of course, a lot of literature has been reviewed. A lot of the methods uh, that are discussed in this literature, unfortunately, sometimes have a false uh, sort of character or manipulating character. The well, there've been a lot of there are a lot of supplements to the work, and the results are quite new and they're relevant to our life. They're practice oriented, and this what I would consider some drawbacks. I would see I would like to see a better principle of choosing stakeholders, because some categories of workers have not been included. This question actually was answered by Kazimir Petrovich, so I'm satisfied. And some presumptions are also dubious. Some and that some management criteria uh, uh, of the effectiveness uh, of an institution are based only on the technological resources and how they are used. Maybe this is a too limited approach, and therefore it conceptually, again, I totally enjoyed the work, and I would support a decision to award the third degree to Kazimir Petrovich. Thank you, Tatiana Dmitrievna, for your review, commenting on your stakeholder categories and the satisfaction between of the CEO and the lower level management. As far as the top management, we understood under the term of top management, I understood both the heads of government committees and the CEOs and the executives of a particular institution. And as far as the satisfaction of in the context of cutting costs and the reduction of the number of health procedures that are provided under the mandatory health insurance system, the technical or technological parameters come to the fore, and everybody wants to cut the use of resources and provide services, and therefore the management is satisfied when the ratio is in favor of lower costs and higher quality. Well, there's been a question by email. Kazimir, this is a very long question. You have answered already part of it. Violeta Maksudovna Habibulin, candidate of biological. She's retired now. This is about the chapter 3, about questionnaires. And so you sent questionnaires to all health organizations in terms of the use of human capital. How did you control the collection of data, and why well, why did you ignore the lower level personnel? How did you control some false answers because some respondents could fear to give a correct, honest answer? Yep, answer please. Kazimir Petrovich answering this whole number of questions. First one, the methodology of the author and co-author. Questionnaires were in order to develop our questionnaires, we used the questionnaires of the Ministry of Health Care of the Russian Federation. They were modified because they had drawbacks. They're the same. These drawbacks are the same as what we see in the regional questionnaires. And of course, I drew upon the opinions of the experts to modify such questionnaires. As far as the mistakes in filling out questionnaires and analyzing the results of this. Well, unfortunately, some questionnaires did have falsehoods. That means that some questionnaires were filled out by the same person, and therefore, because we could see the same handwriting and in some questions, well, unfortunately, under 1%, these questionnaires constituted under 1%, and so it didn't have a major impact on the results of the questionnaires. Questionnaire survey. As far as the why so few questionnaires, we understood that we couldn't send more because the medical workers are overburdened with their work, and therefore in the first year we only sent out 20 questionnaires per institution for each stakeholder category, and the response was great. That meant that some heads of the institutions actually photocopied some questionnaires and spread them around, and we received more copies of filled out questionnaires than we had sent out, and therefore we increased the number of the questionnaires in the next year, and in that year we didn't have more questionnaires received than sent out, and therefore we thought that probably 30% was the maximum for an institution, and as far as the suggestion that we should develop our own questionnaires, that we developed our questionnaires. Well, I already explained that we modified the existing questionnaires because they were inadequate for our task.
Спасибо, Казимир Петрович.
Thank you very much.
Мне кажется, что вы ответили.
I think you answered
Пожалуйста, научный
exhaustively.
руководитель Юрий Васильевич, включите, пожалуйста.
Юрий Васильевич, the academic advisor, please switch on the microphone.
Так, вы меня слышите уже, да?
Да.
Can you hear us?
Уважаемый Татьяна Альбертовна, уважаемые члены ученого
Dear members of the Distinction Council, dear Tatiana Albertovna, I'm very happy to say a few words about the author of the dissertation, and I feel lucky because he answered the last question very well, and he's a very productive worker. In a good way, he was a very stubborn doctoral student, and you see there's very good results of this huge work, very detailed analysis of the data. And, well, he calculated, he used a lot of models. The work only has the tip of the iceberg, maybe a quarter of the calculations that he conducted. I wanted to say a few words about the data he collected. The questionnaires were
Так вот, дело в том, что все эти анкеты нужно
this question is
проверить, определить точку, потом эту точку еще, так сказать, поделить на отрезка, чтобы получить количественное значение этого признака.
So they were filled out in a linear way, and a ruler had to be used in order to interpret the results, and since in the first year some questionnaires were in fact some forms were photocopied, the length of the length of this line was different. Kazimir Petrovich is a very knowledgeable young man. He will be able to use the results of his work in his practical work, and it will increase. This work has increased his professional competence, and this is a very relevant area for research. It's very clear. Thank you very much, Yuri Vasilyevich. Thank you. I would like to say that because we work in a remote mode, I would like to ask this formal question. Do we have any objections as to the procedure that we're following? Any questions? No questions? No objections? Thank you. Then now we can make a break to deliberate, or we can vote immediately. If we want to deliberate, then we'll switch off the broadcast and do we need to have this break, or can we vote without it? Voting? Okay, immediately. All right. So if the members of the Station Council believe that we don't need an additional break to deliberate on the verdict, then I would like you to vote. I put to the vote the resolution of awarding a degree of candidate of economic sciences. This is an open voting procedure. I remind you that not fewer than three members of the Station Council should vote for the decision to be taken. And so, Igor Mikhailovich, your opinion. Dear Tatiana Albertovna, dear members of the Station Council, this is Kazimir. After hearing the presentation and looking back at the work, good relevance, originality, good language, and that characterize the Kazimir Petrovich. I vote to award the degree to him. I took account of your positive vote. Farid Nakipovich, I believe that Kazimir Petrovich Iablonskii deserves the degree of economic science, candidate of economic sciences. Nelly Borisovna, this work is a very serious study, and that Kazimir Petrovich is able to defend his positions, and it's very important for I will enjoy voting for awarding the academic degree of candidate of economic sciences to Semir Petrovich. Professor Ali, your opinion? How do you?
Having read the PhD before and having listened to the presentation as well as question and answer, I'm quite happy to give full treatment for the PhD to Kazimir.
Thank you very much. Tatiana Albertovna, your sound is off. Yeah. No, we've heard Professor Ali's opinion. On my part, I also support the work, and I believe that we should award the degree of candidate of economic sciences to Kazimir Petrovich Iablonskii. That means that all the 5 members of the dissertation council have voted in favor of the awarding of the degree. Nobody voted against and no abstentions. Therefore, dear members of the Station Council, the decision to award Kazimir Petrovich Iablonskii a candidate of sciences, economic sciences degree in the degree field of management is taken unanimously. And therefore, because we had a remote session, I would like to ask again if there are any objections as to the procedure. No objections. Therefore, the candidate has the floor again. Dear members, dear esteemed members of the Station Council, I would like to thank everyone who helped me to work on my dissertation and reviewed my dissertation. I'd like to thank St. Petersburg University, the Graduate School of Management, the Department of Operational Management, who also whom I consulted and with whose help I improved my dissertation. I would like to thank the Committee for Healthcare and representative of healthcare institutions and all the experts that took part in this research and in developing recommendations. On my dissertation. I would like to thank my academic advisor for the insistence that he has showed in working with me, and his wife, who helped to process the questionnaires, and of course my parents for the support. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kazimir. On behalf of all the members of the session, I would like to congratulate you on this achievement. This is a very important event in a very unusual time, and the procedure is very unusual too, but you will remember it, and I encourage you to do further research. Please don't drop it. I would like to congratulate Yuri Vasilyevich as well, because I know how happy a research advisor is every time their student defends their decision. Thank you very much. Anyone would like to say?
Can I add a couple of things?
Можно ли мне добавить? Прежде всего,
yeah, okay. First of all, congratulate to Dr. Kazimir. We can now officially say doctor. I guess I enjoyed reading your dissertation. It was very good, very well written. I congratulate to Professor Yuri as well. I've got a couple of questions. Outside of the evaluations process, I mean, the process of the YY is finished, but we all presented our evaluation of your dissertation. I want to know how you can evaluate your work. This is my first question. I mean, if you want to evaluate your own work, how would you evaluate it now? And I've got one more question after this.
Thank you very much, Professor Ali, for this original question. I'm happy with my research on the whole. In the process of this work, I faced a number of challenges, not only scientific, but also managerial or organizational, of organizational nature, and I succeeded in it, not without the help of the academic advisor and members of the healthcare committee, but I think the research has been completed in a quality way.
Thank you. One more question, if I may. Just assume I want to get a PhD students working on this topic, and I want to see what advice would you give to new research students starting into this area of research?
Я хотел бы выслушать, что бы вы посоветовали этим студентам as far as the well, I can give a lot of pieces of advice, but the main piece of advice is never step away from the goal of the research. Maybe it's not clear yet, but the goal is to complete the work that you've started for any PhD student.
Very good, thank you.
Очень хорошо, спасибо. If any uh, any congratulations from other members of the team?
Если нет, пожалуйста. Нелли Борисовна,
Kazimir Petrovich, congratulations, and Yuri Vasilovich. Every defense is an exam for the academic advisor as well, because every time you want to have a new solution, a new method, and I think you've succeeded. And Kazimir Petrovich, if you have time, it would be great if you could write practical recommendations to decision makers and to practitioners. And that would be clear to use. So I wish that this could happen. And success in future work. I would like to congratulate on this wonderful result, on the wonderful presentation, and encourage you to publish. You have to publish maybe two to three articles to cover the material that you haven't made public yet. But now, please take a good rest and catch up on your sleep. And we have gone through it, and this is my applause to you. Congratulations again. Yes, stay well and keep on. Thank you very much, Igor. There's you reminded us of the traditional applause that you normally have offline. But... Yes, Farid Nikipovich. First of all, congratulations on the successful defense, Igor Vasilovich. I'm very happy to see. I was very happy to read the good work, and I was very happy to see a lot of my colleagues. That thank you very much, and don't don't relax too much because these questions that these questions that you received today may be asked again at the higher station committee as well. Thank you very much. This is the first time that I've conducted a defense in a remote mode, and I would like to express my gratitude to St. Petersburg University and the support team. And the session is now declared closed. Take care of yourself, and please switch off the broadcast. Thank you very much.